What's up, everybody? Nick Whalen, Alex Barutha here with you from RotoWire. Talking some fantasy basketball. We're, 2 months out from the start of the 2024-25 season. Time to start doing some draft prep. We want to talk about some rookies. Now, Alex, this is not the most exciting rookie class. We know that. This is a draft that, if you're a fantasy head, you're maybe not thrilled with some of the options here. There's no Victor Wembanyama. There's certainly not even a prospect on the level of a Paolo Banchero or a Cade Cunningham from the previous two drafts. But as we know, history strongly dictates that at least a handful of the players from the 2024 draft will be useful for us in fantasy basketball. So we're going to get right into it. We're going to go draft style, our top 8 rookies for this season. I'll give you the first pick, Alex. We'll go back and forth. Who is your number 1 fantasy basketball rookie for 24-25?
I'm going with Zach Edey, keeping it simple. I think there's a pretty strong chance he starts next to Jaren Jackson in Memphis because, historically speaking, I think Memphis has liked to surround or put, a center next to Jaren Jackson like Steven Adams. And Edey, look, he didn't play as much summer league as we had hoped due to an injury, but someone who I think if he can play even just 24, 25 minutes a game, has double-double upside, maybe with 2 blocks. If that was any other center in fantasy, you'd be drafting them around pick 100, if not sooner. I'm
still a little bit shell-shocked that Zach Edey was a lottery pick. I think it took a unique confluence of events for that to happen, but you're right. I'm not going to push back on this one. I think we kind of know who Zach Edey is. It's not he's not a prospect who's teaming with potential, but I think he is one of the few plug-and-play players in the 2024 class, and he's also on a very short list of guys who have a path to a starting job. And I think as of right now, the way this Grizzlies roster breaks down, I think it's likely that Zach Edey is the starting center. I think they prefer to play Jaren Jackson at the 4.
Yeah, I think so too. I think they'll feed the ball to him down low once in a while, maybe with the second unit. It's just, it's going to be exciting to see.
All right, so number 2 overall pick. This one is tough because I think Edey to me is the number 1 guy. I'm going to go Reed Sheppard from the Houston Rockets. And part of this is I love Sheppard, the player. You look at the efficiency numbers at Kentucky last season. This is not even a guy who we were pinpointing coming out of high school as a for sure one and done, right? I think he played even better than we expected last season at Kentucky. Appeared off the bench in 28 of his 33 games. Still gave you 13 points, 4.5 assists, 4 rebounds, 2.5 steals. Even 0.7 blocks per game for a guy like Reed Sheppard is really impressive. And perhaps most importantly, 52.1% from beyond the arc at Kentucky last season. Now, the concerns for Reed Sheppard, to me, it's the depth chart, right? This is a Houston team that was in the lottery for a reason, but at the same time has a ton of young talent. You have Fred VanVleet as an entrenched veteran at point guard. You have Jalen Green at shooting guard. You have a bunch of options: Dylan Brooks, Amen Thompson, Cam Whitmore, Tari Eason on the wing, Jabari Smith, Alfred Şengün. They're going to command their touches up front. So I'm very curious to see where exactly Reed Sheppard fits into this. I think he has to come off the bench to begin the year. There's almost no question to me about that, but he's one injury away from, to me, being perhaps the most impactful player in this rookie class, and certainly my favorite rookie guard when it comes to fantasy.
I agree with pretty much everything you just said, including the potential downside of where exactly do the minutes come from, how much will he touch the ball if he's on the court with more established options. I do kind of like the idea of him and Amen Thompson playing together. I think there will be a lot of 2-man action with Sheppard and Şengün. That could be very fruitful. And, we know assists are very valuable in fantasy, as are steals. And Sheppard as a rookie with the potential, a high assist potential and a high steals potential, I guess per minute, definitely makes him intriguing.
All right, where are you going at number 3?
I'm pretty conflicted. I think I'm just going to go with the minutes upside here and take Alex Sarr, who appears to be in line to start at probably power forward. I assume they'll shift Kyle Kuzma down to the 3 and start Valanciunas at the 5. I assume that's why they signed Valanciunas. There's a lot of assuming going on here with Washington because their roster is a mess. They still have Brogdon. I don't want to get into all of that. And obviously, Sarr was a disappointment in Summer League, at least on the offensive side of the court. He was taking a lot of mid-range jumpers, a lot of contested stuff. But on defense, I thought he looked great. It remains to be seen how much he'll be around the rim necessarily if he's not playing a ton of center. But I think he was pretty intimidating on the perimeter. And in fantasy, steals and blocks carry a lot of weight. So if he can, at the very least, be impactful on that side of the ball and just be passable on offense with 30 minutes a game, he has plenty of upside.
Summer League was concerning for Alex Sarr. We don't want to put too much stock into that. 9 of 47 combined from the field, 22.6 true shooting percentage. That gave him a 3.8 PER for the Las Vegas Summer League. Not exactly encouraging, but no, you're right. I think this is a unique rookie class, right? Normally, we could probably come up with 5 or 10 guys who you're excited to get your hands on at the end of a fantasy draft. And I'm not thrilled with Alex Sarr. He's not your typical number 2 overall pick. He's a little bit more raw. There are a lot of unknowns here. Obviously, he didn't play, American college basketball, so it feels a little bit unfamiliar. But you're right. I think you have to defer to the opportunity here. And again, he's on that short list of players who have a pretty clear path to a starting job. I think they do start him at the 4. I think they go Valanciunas at the 5. The thing is, he's not being handed the keys here, right? Like Jordan Poole's still going to get plenty of touches. Kyle Kuzma is by default, I guess, the number 1 option in Washington. We'll see on Malcolm Brogdon. Is he still on this roster come opening night? Does he play 35 games like it felt like he did last season? Do they move him at some point? I think they probably do. He's the odd man out, but either way, I think you got to chase the upside there with Alex Sarr. So not much pushback for me. Before we get to number 4, just want to remind everybody, give us a like, subscribe to the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball YouTube channel. That helps us out a ton. Really appreciate it. All right, number 4. Here's where it gets interesting, Alex. A lot of options here. I'm thinking maybe Matas Buzelis, but I'm going to go Donovan Clingan for the Portland Trailblazers. Much like the Houston Rockets, I think you look at this Portland team and you're like, man, they were one of the worst teams in the league last season. There's not a lot of talent here. I kind of disagree. I think, that they're getting pushed down to the bottom of the West, and rightfully so. But this is a team that returns the number 2 pick from last season, Scoot Henderson. You get a healthy Anthony Simons. They traded for Denny Avdia. You're bringing back a healthy Shaedon Sharpe. You still have Jeremy Grant. You still have DeAndre Ayton. There is a lot of talent on this roster. Ayton specifically is standing in the way of Donovan Clingan, but Clingan is one of those guys to me. Does he even need that many minutes to be impactful for fantasy? Much like Zach Edey, he should be a high volume rebounder. He can pass a little bit for a big man. I don't know if he's going to be quite as efficient around the rim as Zach Edey is. My guess is probably not, but when we're looking for, kind of deeper rookie values, guys, you don't have to take anywhere near pick 100. I'm looking at the blocks and I'm looking at the rebounds upside for Clingan.
I like that pick by you. Like you said, the only question and one of the reasons I didn't consider him at pick 1 or 2 was just the questions about how much he's going to play, behind Ayton, behind Rob Williams. And maybe one of those 2 guys will get dealt. I mean, maybe they'll try playing Ayton at the 4 and have it's possible. Portland projects to be so bad, they might be willing to experiment with that just to get Clingan on the court. We talk about like Walker Kessler's rookie year. He only needed 25 minutes a game to be worth like a 5th or 6th round pick just because of the blocks upside alone. And so when you get into a situation where you're probably taking Clingan decently outside the top 100, maybe with the final pick in your draft, there's not even going to be that many other guys on the board, let alone just rookies, anybody else who has the kind of blocks upside that he does.
I'm operating as if he's going to be the backup to Ayton for the entire season. Portland is certainly a team that has some shutdown risk. Ayton would be near the top of that list. So maybe later in the season, we see a bit more of Clingan, but if he could just play 18 to 22 minutes, I think there's a chance he could give you a block and a half, maybe in a best case scenario, close to 2 blocks. I mean, he was at like 4.5 blocks per game in about 25 minutes per game in Summer League. And again, it's Summer League, but that's the only real NBA sample we have to work with here. All right, you're on the clock here at number 5, Alex. Where are you going?
Actually, I think there are a decent amount of options here. I'm going to do something controversial. I'm going to take the number 1 overall pick.
Oh my goodness.
Zaccharie Risacher. I know. To me, it was kind of between him and Buzelis, who you mentioned earlier. But Risacher, it's not a guarantee that he starts out of the gate. I would think that also the optics of not starting him are pretty bad, as he is the number 1 pick. He is going to be competing for touches on the wing or at least at forward, even with just Jalen Johnson and DeAndre Hunter. And that's before, obviously, you start talking about Trae Young and Bogdanovich. But I liked what I saw from Risacher. I think he's a better passer than he was presented as in Summer League. I think his shooting is still a little bit of a question mark. He is kind of streaky, but I do think there's a potential for him to see upper 20s in minutes. I think he can just do a little bit of everything and be a connector where I think he'll have some pretty good games.
Yeah, I think he's somebody to me that I would not be surprised if he gets off to a slow start, adjusting to the NBA game, but I would expect him to get more and more comfortable as the season goes along. I think he'll have a pretty decent shot to push DeAndre Hunter to start on the wing there. Obviously he could play the 4 behind Jalen Johnson as well. Maybe even try him out as kind of this bigger option at the 2, but really he's more of a 3 or a 4. A lot of it depends on what you think of the Atlanta Hawks. Are they going to be a team that pushes for a playoff spot, pushes for the play-in? I think they can. If the season goes south early on, maybe we see more Risacher later in the year, but I think that's a fine pick at number 5. With the 6th pick, I'm taking the guy you mentioned. I'm going Matas Buzelis. I have some major efficiency concerns here. I think I'm going to like him a lot more in points leagues this season. He was not an efficient shooter for the G League Ignite last year. He was not very efficient from the field or from three in Summer League. I think that probably carries over. And there's some big roster question marks here with the Chicago Bulls, right? You and I have talked a lot about, like, how do you value Kobe White right now? Not really knowing what's going on with Zach LaVine. Nick Vucevic is still there. I think the Bulls would perhaps prefer to move at least one of those guys, if not both. If they don't, it's a little bit tougher to find the path to big minutes for Matas Buzelis, but this is not a very deep Chicago Bulls team. Like, even if he's their sixth or seventh man, I think there's still going to be plenty of minutes available for him. And much like Risacher, could get off to a slow start, but he's somebody I see growing and growing as the year goes along. I know the numbers, efficiency-wise, weren't always pretty for him, both in the G League and in Summer League, but I just like the way the guy plays, and I think he's the best player available on the board right now.
Really aggressive player, which I think will bode well for him playing in that second unit with Chicago. And yeah, again, the question marks with the roster are, maybe more of an upside for Buzelis, especially if you can get him late and stash him. And then if LaVine gets dealt, or Vucevic gets dealt, or something else, then Buzelis could rise at the end of the season.
Yeah, he's a second half guy for me, but I want some exposure to Buzelis. All right, your last pick at number 7. Where are you going?
I don't love the situation for him, but I'm going to take Stephon Castle. Really impressed me in Summer League with how physical he played. He was trying to dunk on people. His footwork is excellent. Obviously, the shot is a question, which is why he was not really in the conversation for the number 1 pick come draft day. And the backcourt for San Antonio, they bring in Chris Paul. They have Trey Jones there. Devin Vassell is really established and is sort of rising within that offense. But I do think Castle will bring a great defensive intensity to San Antonio alongside Wembanyama. And I think that's something Greg Popovich likes. And who knows? We can't necessarily guarantee Chris Paul is going to stay healthy, or that he may even be on the team in the second half of the season if he gets dealt to a contender or something. So at some point, I think we're talking this late in a rookie draft, I'm just going to bet on the talent to some extent.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's a good chance that Castle's maybe more impactful in real life than he is in fantasy. We got to see that 3-point shooting come around, but I really like what I saw from him, especially on the defensive side of the ball in limited action in Summer League. I mean, the way he was hounding guys full court, I think there's some steals potential for Stephon Castle. And, like you said, Chris Paul, Trey Jones, Devin Vassell, they're all ahead of him right now, but he's one injury away, I think, from seeing big minutes for this team. I'm going to finish it out at number 8 here, Alex. This is tough. I got 2 names I'm considering. I'll tell you, I'm thinking Yves Missi from the New Orleans Pelicans, who somehow maybe they're starting center this year. And as we know, opportunity is king in fantasy basketball. But I'm still convinced that, maybe they ride Daniel Tice a little bit more than we think, or they bring in another body at some point. I mean, this is a team clearly with playoff aspirations. I don't know if they can just, kind of hand the keys at center to a rookie who was taken 21st overall. So I'm going to go with Carlton Bub Carrington of the Washington Wizards, the 14th overall pick in the 2024 draft. Came off of a really impressive freshman year at Pitt, looked great in Summer League, 16 points, almost 3 3-pointers per game. This guy rebounds extremely well for a guard, especially a guard of his size, 7.5 rebounds per game at Summer League, over 5 assists, gave you a steal as well. I just said opportunity is king for Yves Missi in New Orleans. I think there's going to be opportunity for Carrington in Washington. I do not trust Malcolm Brogdon to stay healthy. I don't necessarily trust the Wizards to keep Malcolm Brogdon on this roster. I think there's a world, fairly early in the season in which Bub Carrington is perhaps looking at a starting point guard job for the Wizards. They no longer have Tyus Jones, so not somebody that you probably even have to take in most drafts. I don't think a lot of people are going to have Bub Carrington circled on their list. So if you're in a shallower league, maybe you just leave him, leave him be, take somebody with a little bit more immediate upside at the end of the draft. But he's somebody I'm prepared to add early in the season. I think there's going to be plenty of opportunity for him on what could be, the worst or the second worst team in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, I mean, if we think Washington's starting lineup is bad, think about how bad their bench is and how starved for playmaking and scoring they are, which is exactly what Bub Carrington does. He scores and he playmakes. He's a mid-range assassin. Yeah, I really like the upside here. And you mentioned it. I mean, whether or not even Brogdon's on this team, I think Carrington can come in and play 6-man minutes and put up numbers.
Yeah. And again, even if Brogdon remains with the Wizards, what's the over-under for games played? Like 50.5 this year? I mean, I would probably take the under on that based on how it's gone in recent years. So I'm all over Bub Carrington. I think he's going to end up being a steal at the end of drafts. All right, that does it. Those are our top 8 rookies as of right now for the 2024-25 fantasy basketball season. Stay tuned to this channel. We'll have a ton more content coming your way over the next couple of months. We'll have a ton of content going up at RotoWire.com as well. And again, please like, please subscribe to the channel. That helps us out a bunch.